Hi, I'm Bob Kraus, and I'm president of the Veterans National Recovery Center. We do a lot of work with veterans that have post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. When I was a young boy growing up on a farm, my parents told me about many of the farmers around us that had PTSD. And they had their problems because they had PTSD, but they could also function independently. Many of the social problems we have today with our PTSD veterans, where they have to work in a hierarchy and they can't get along because of various issues that PTSD brings them, they're not there on the farm. You're your own boss, and because of that, many veterans with PTSD look to farming as a profession. It keeps them in a quiet zone where they can heal themselves. But the big problem with getting to be a farmer and having PTSD is often you can't get into it. Everybody thinks it's a big multi-million-dollar business, but it doesn't have to be. It can be small-scale farming. And we have a gentleman that we'll be talking to today. His name is Ray Mailer, and he has developed an economic model that will work for small-scale farming. That is low entry cost. It's something that somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder can do. And if you have a family member that has PTSD, you might want to think about contacting Ray Mailer yourself, and we'll show you the contact information later. But without further ado, I'm going to give you some of Ray's credentials. And this is Ray right here, Ray Mailer. He was a farm boy and also a chiropractor by trade, but he is also a jack of all trades and a scientist. And he followed studies that were initiated by some of the major land-grant universities of America. And he has created something for Iowa and for other states that will really work for the entry of veterans into farming. Ray?
Bob, thank you for making a site visit. I appreciate the time. Very kind of you. What we have done, I had an accident and could no longer continue my healthcare clinic. My specialty was occupational health. It was a closed head injury. And so I reverted to being a volunteer to help establish community gardens and school gardens, and it became a resource community, and it's really brought my life around to a full fun adventure of being a resource in the community. We worked through the NRCS office and Saltwater Conservation District and followed the guidelines of the 2008-2009 Rebuild Iowa project resulted from all those floods we had. And our project received numerous awards for what we've been able to accomplish. We capture surface runoff and we intercept farm tile that runs into Sailorville Lake. We take that high nitrate water and that coffee colored water and we put it through our irrigation system, solar powered, and now we grow table foods.
So Ray, looking at this wall here, now this is some of the awards you've gotten for this project. Can you maybe point some of them out and tell us what we have here?
We're featured in a National Outdoor magazine for implementing conservation projects to grow table foods and become school education sites. We've got a community award from Community Concepts as a community partner for helping start beekeeping on inner city kids. We received the 2012 Nourish Iowa Award. We received awards for the governor for the Volunteer Educator of the Year Award. We received the Best Development Project of Iowa Award in 2016 for watershed mitigation. And the list kind of goes on. We just received a lot of accommodations and recognitions. A lot of this is done as a collaborative effort. You know, we're bringing the NRCS, we're bringing in the schools to help model and design our outcomes projects. Part of it is documentation results and getting outcomes. And we can show you in short order. We started, this ground was hard runoff ground that was used for growing drought-resistant crops. In 3 years of this high nitrate water we intercept, the ground was so nice you can dig giant sweet potatoes with the bare hands.
Well, let's go out and take a look at your 10-acre farm spread. It is economically successful
Yes.
and highly profitable. And we'll be going out here, and when we get outside the door here, Ray, let's, if you could just kind of explain everything. We've been in your shed, your farm shed right here.
Yes.
And it's, you built that yourself, but now we're looking at your land. What all do we have here?
Well, when we look at the pond right here, just next to the goose box, you'll see a soft spot in the ice. That's where the farm tile runs into this pond that we intercepted. This pond also catches surface runoff. That's why it gets so dark and so much algae bloom. A little bit to the right, you see an existing soybean field, and straight north you see corn stalks. And if you look past the pond, you'll see a whole bunch of trees coming in.
And I see a deer blind out there, too.
Yes, we're doing agroforestry as a buffer for our pond. The pond's NRCS designed. NRCS cost share at 75%. I've got 2 of these basins, and it cost me less than $1,000. So for less than $1,000, I'll have no water bills ever, have no fertilizer bills ever. I basically have no input costs for production.
And how much does it cost you per month to get that water on your land if you want to get the land?
Yeah, our neighbors put in a well, and they had to go to 500 foot. That costs a lot. That'll cost about $1,300 per month per acre to irrigate. Our water bill is zero. It's solar powered. Our operational cost is zero. The solar, we spent $10,000, and that covers the house, the barn, and the irrigation. And it's 2-inch pipe, goes throughout the whole 10 acres. Wow.
Okay, so now you got this, the bean field over here, that's a runoff area. Was that where you had your neighbor that had the watershed problems?
Right.
Okay, what happened?
That silted. We had a 10-inch rain, and the water came from up across the highway over to here too. The left part of that field still comes my way. There's a little ridge. So this part of that field ran down to the road. Those 10-inch beans were covered to the top at the bottom, and all the silt and mud had went over and flooded the neighbor's house with mud. We had no runoff. We kept all our water on site, and the basin was full, a little bit overflow, but it went into the prairie. The upper basin was a 500-year basin. That did not overflow. It was about 10 inches from the top. So our water left the farm. That basin emptied over a 4-day period. Our neighbor, who always had flooding on his driveways, had 1.5 inches, 3 inches rain. We had 10 inches, and his driveway was clean after that 10-inch rain flood event. So
this was the one down here that formerly had a lot of corn stalk residue and dirt and such on his driveway.
Right.
Okay, and this time it was totally clear after a 10-inch rain.
He sent a letter to the NRCS office at a 3-inch rain because he had no corn stalks, bean stubble, or mud. Then we had a 10-inch rain, and it was still clean. And it goes to his house, a few more houses before that water runs to Sayleville Lake. For a lot of farmers, they've got this stuff going right into a stream or the lake or the Mississippi River Basin. We can stop that on site on a small scale. So I use that water to grow crops. I also have a sediment basin over there that catches sediment from the neighbor's farm. Add to my compost, I put the best of his farm back on top of my ground.
Okay, so over here, right over here, that's where the compost heap is, right? And it's probably, it looks like it's a little low from what it would normally be. Is that right? You've cleaned it out for the fall, probably.
Yep.
You got your old stuff out of
And
there.
I make new topsoil for my place.
Okay, and that's all pretty much, it's finished up compost, so it is at a topsoil level. And then going to the left here, of course, we got the basins, and you look over the basins, and you see those trees, baby trees over there. What are those, right?
Those are chestnut trees.
Chestnut trees.
So for agroforestry, I use chestnut. They're perennial crop. There's no tillage, so I can have those right around my basins rather than having brome grass or prairie. Another tree I use is I grow cider apples. And there's no store in Iowa that sells apples to make cider for these kids. So I'm growing cider apples. It's a U-pick. And they can pick them and mash them, and they don't have to be grade A's. And that's all irrigated also with the same high nitrate water.
Okay. So now we got the water over, or the trees over here. Now, chestnuts, do they fetch a pretty good price for the nuts?
Yeah, you go in the store and they're about $10 a pound.
$10 a pound for those. And
now, if I can irrigate the last 2 weeks of August, I can double next year's nut crop. I've got free water. And the more water I use, the more water I clean. My discharge of the lake is crystal clear now to test 1 point above tap water for nitrates.
Now you said
So-
one of the things you do, of course, you got some pipes out there to irrigate all that stuff and everything else on here, but then you got a place where you well, I guess it's this farm you put it right in Sailorville. You don't send it back into the aquifer. do
No,
you?
about 40% of the water I use will percolate back to the aquifer.
Okay, so
clean.
it's percolation.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And no other district farm is doing that. They're run it through tiles and push it to the streams and the lakes. But what
yours,
I do,
everything goes through this basin, and
Yeah.
that cleans it up.
about 40% of the water I use actually will infiltrate back to the aquifer clean because it's going through my gardens or my agroforestry or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so now we got all this. It looks like this whole high land up here is that's all chestnut, and then over here. Now, where do you do your squash at? Ray? You got squash?
I mix it. Excuse me. I plant the squash right through the trees.
Oh, in the trees.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And
okay.
so they'll help cover the ground and control the weeds in the grass. As the trees begin to get bigger in canopy, I'll switch from acorn squash and butternut squash to mushrooms and grow them in a canopy.
Wow.
So it'll still be a dual cropping system.
Okay, so you've got you're paying for your land while your trees are getting mature enough to get the nuts.
True story.
Okay, that's a pretty smart thing. Now, you say you got to do butternut squash out here, and you told me an anecdote, and I'll repeat it if I could. You said that a farmer's gross on corn, on a 200 bushel an acre corn, would be about 6 cents a pound.
Right.
And now you said that the gross on your squash was how much again?
$2.50 a pound.
$2.50 a pound. And that's selling it at the local market.
Yeah, and I actually sell it right out the door here. It's convenient to have enough people coming through that I don't have to go to the farmer's market.
And you've got no fertilizer costs, you got no water costs,
No electric cost.
no electric costs, and because it's mulched with your compost, you probably don't have too many weed problems.
No.
I'm thinking, because the mulch wouldn't have that in it. So that is so it's basically a low cost operation.
Yeah.
And probably a low maintenance operation too. How
Correct.
much time do you spend once that seed's in the ground?
Well, they asked me to give a talk at Iowa State to the grad students for the agri or permaculture and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them I don't have any employees. We don't have, my hose reel is empty. We don't have to wrangle hoses. That's the labor cost. And you have more damage of crops wrangling hoses than about anything else. And ours is all irrigated. I can spray it, I can use fountains, I can drip irrigate it. I use mostly drip irrigation. It's efficient and there's no work to it.
Yeah, and pound for pound, acre for acre, you get more quantity out of butternut squash than you would if that was planted in corn.
True.
So not only do you have a per pound cost that is substantially different, both in terms of your inputs and outputs. In other words, corn's going to cost you a lot to put out there. You're
Right.
going to have to cultivate it, you're going to have to put herbicides on it, you're going to have to put nitrogens on it, those kinds of things. You don't have to do that with your squash because the new nutrients are already resident in that basically you have to call it junk water when it comes
Right.
in here. Yeah.
So we don't have the extra passes on the field. I don't have any input costs on the field.
Yeah. So you get to keep more of that $2.40 per pound
Right.
than that farmer would of his 6 cents per
Right.
pound.
And then we have beehives out here,
Mm-hmm.
and they boost my pollination in my gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach beekeeping classes, and they're free to veterans. I do teach beekeeping to the schools and civilians,
Mm-hmm.
and we have honey for sale.
Cherry Glen Farm.
So this is all part of having multiple revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go up the watershed, because the watershed's the entry point for 120,000 of these sites.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can be in the rural community and be a part-time employee for the big ag farmer, and you can be available spring and fall, revenue there, and have your own product going. 86% of Iowa's food dollar goes out of state. We've got no competition.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better deal.
Yeah.
And then maybe in time you can rent an 80 and be his part-time help. Maybe buy the 80, rent a 160 on the big guy, and still be his part-time help and learn to work in the machine shop and do the welding and repair, learn livestock. But you're out in that yard in that farm country being a full-time person.
Okay, so now, Ray, you got this giant 10-acre spread, you know, and it includes not only your very nice house over here, but then it also includes the barn. So under production and operations, you probably got not more than 6 acres here, I guess. Is that about right?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's about 6, and that includes the retention basins. So what kind of setup cost did this thing cost? How much was it?
I rented a trencher and put in the irrigation. So you look at about $1,200 to $1,400 to put in the irrigation. So now I can go ahead and rent the air compressor and blow it out and service others in the fall. That's revenue stream. I can start my own in the spring and start others and charge them for it. Another revenue stream. So our goal here is to have a hands-on place where we can help teach people those skills for veterans and civilians.
Yeah. Okay. So you're for getting the operational land ready. The costs were really not significant.
No.
You're $1,000 a piece for your 2 ponds, and you know, and some trenching for tiling plus materials.
Right.
And that was it.
Right.
And now the thing that made it valuable though is not what you did, but that junk water coming off of the fields that was rich in nitrogen, because the Iowa farmers waste about, what was it, about 1.5 billion?
1.2 billion a year in Iowa is lost in fertilizer by the farmers.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And all we do
billion.
is intercept that as an entrepreneur, and I have no production costs now.
So it's in their garbage can, but their garbage can is your bread and butter.
There you go.
Okay, so let's take a look inside and see what happens with this. And we'll, Vicky's going to precede us here. We're going back into the barn. You can see there's a little greenhouse in here. We've got the tractor over here, and then we're going to look at some rock. And this is when I was a young boy going to college, we'd call this Rock Shop 101. But we got 1, 2, 3, 4 rocks here. And each of these rocks tells a story. And Ray, I'd like you to tell that story about these rocks and what they mean to somebody that wanted to get into farming business.
So when I bought this farm, I knew it was in tough shape because the rocks came up clean, meaning there's not very much bacterial activity or soil, life in the soil.
Yeah.
And this is not a rock, it's actually a chunk of hard clay. No wormholes, barely any root fiber.
And you can't, even if I run my fingernail over that, I can't even break it with my fingernail. That means that's the base for all those squash you planted.
Right.
That's amazing. Now, I couldn't, I would have thought that was a rock and you couldn't grow anything but cactus.
Well, I hired my friend that's got big equipment on a large farm to come with a ripper. And he got in 1/2 inch to 3 inches.
That's all he could do. The rest was that solid. Wow.
And some farms, you can buy. We had some ground in northwest Iowa in Dixon County, and it had 7 feet of topsoil. You're ready to start. This I knew it had about a 3-year delay because the rock's so clean and the soil's so hard.
You mean there was no bacteria on this rock?
Right.
So
and
it was
bacteria
smooth. It's pretty smooth. Yeah, nothing but.
On these other rocks from a good farm, look how the rocks are broken down and coated with a plaque. That means a lot of bacteria, and they make nitric acid.
And the nitric acid is what eats away the rock's surface and turns it into mineral?
The nitric acid will cause cavities in your teeth. It dissolves the rocks. The plants like it because it's nitrogen, and they grow like crazy. So with this, you get a lot of iron released, a lot of calcium, potassium released. So if you get 200 bushels an acre in this, the farmer's not putting on hardly any fertilizer because it's already healthy soil.
And I'll bet you dimes to donuts, if you went into any production farm, say in North Iowa, you'd have rocks that look like this, not like this.
And a farm that has these kind of rocks, nice and clean, and not much bacterial activity is going to require a lot of input costs.
And that's where you get your liquid nitrogen, 32% liquid nitrogen runs about, the average is about 360. I think it's down to 220 a ton or something like that now because of the bad economy.
So I have no fertilizer costs. I have no water costs because the water keeps coming through that tile. And it makes a real nutritious, productive, healthy soil. So now I can grow tons of nutrient-dense table foods. They're high-value crops, the table foods are, and if you wait till the right to pick them, you've got nutrient density, but it takes a healthy soil.
Yeah, and the healthy soil will naturally mean fewer rocks over the years because the
Right.
rocks can carry it away.
These rocks are the same, but this soil had a lot of bacteria in it.
And that's what caused all the
Right.
deterioration in the rock. Well, now let's look at what the outcomes are here. And I'm gonna show you this twice. I'm going to point my finger here because if you want to get a hold of Ray,
Cherry.
here is and be sure to include the word Iowa. It's Cherry Glen Farm Iowa at gmail.com. That's CHERRYGLENFARMIOWA at gmail.com. And I will repeat that when you have your pen at the end of end of our little show here. But Ray, why don't you talk about the end product here? And this has some big picture ramifications for Iowa and for other states that are fighting the issue of cleaning up our water. And so why don't you just tell me what this is about, Ray?
Well, I'll say first, the watershed is the entry point. All that water is draining downhill through open ditches, through farm tiles, in the streams and creeks, and it's easy to intercept. The water's shallow, it's low cost, and it can be a permanent addition to your farming operations on a small scale. And there's over 120,000 sites in Iowa that have impaired watershed sites. They're mapped by the DNR. The NRCS office does the designing for free for these basins.
So you get free advisement and free cash?
Right.
Wow.
And they cost share at 75%. There's a new program that will cost share at 90% for these specific impaired watershed sites. I got 2 basins. Total cost was less than $4,000. My cost share was less than $1,000. And I'll never have any input production costs again.
It's amazing.
There's no better business model.
Yeah.
And you can increase your production 250%, increase your infiltration of the aquifer by 40%, and you can increase your biodiversity. It should be a one health, one food system approach.
So, yeah, and in Iowa, of course, we've been debating clean water for a while, and I know that there's been some huge retention basins that we've built around the state, but they really, other than clean the water, they don't spin anything back to the economy. And so what you're looking at is really revolutionary. You're never going to replace large-scale industrial farming. It has its purpose, and that will continue. But you've got these slices that just don't fit into commercial farming. You know, they're too small or too irregular, or they flood too often, or the ground's too hard, and you can't use them profitably. But they fit very well into this model. And this model, if you compare it dollar to dollar, dimes to dimes, can possibly solve a major part of the Midwest clean water problem without as much cost as some of the traditional models that we've been talking about with the large-scale basins. We have these little basins, but they support economic activity, and so they kind of pay for themselves. Is that what we're here?